record this. Cool. So this is the second part of the demo that I was running yesterday. Basically, we are going to complete a little bit the intro to Selenium. Yesterday, let me share my screen. Where we left? Yeah. Basically, yesterday we installed Selenium, we installed Chrome, we installed Chrome driver, and I told you this thing about WebDriver Manager. So, if you want to do the canonical way of downloading Chrome driver and put that into path and then initialize your driver using that Chrome driver, that'll be great. But if for some reason you're lazy as me, you can always use this Chrome driver manager, install, and you will get Chrome driver installed in cache, and you don't have to worry about where to put Chrome driver at all. So let me just run a few cells here. Okay, WebDriver Manager. Sorry for all this mess in the notebook. And yeah, everything's working fine. You can see that WebDriver Manager is already installed, and it's using that to connect to this Python website. And all right, so yesterday, where we left was basically I was telling you that you can do whatever you want with Selenium. And there are a lot of commands, but it's going to be a little bit difficult to remember all of them. So once you know what you want to do, you can just Google that, and in Firefox, in Google, and go to Stack Overflow. For example, if you say Selenium, scroll down Python, there will be 1,000 answers here in Stack Overflow, and just copy paste that and that will work. Usually that's the way with Selenium. It's the community, the Stack Overflow community has a lot of solutions, and for some reason they are really focused with Selenium. So any question that you might have about Selenium, you can always take a look at Stack Overflow and know how to do it. But for now, instead of doing that, instead of just taking a look at Stack Overflow, I'm going to show you at least those commands that you are going to need more, like, for sure. So let me close this. I'm going to move this to the right. I'm going to keep this open here. And one thing that we were doing yesterday was, for example, if you have one of the things that you can do in Selenium is getting information about what we have in the website. You will do this a lot. So for example, let's say that I want to get information. I'm going to go to Wikipedia. And I'm going to, I'm going to look for koalas. And I want to get all these text here, all right? So you will have to do this a lot. Just try to get some specific text from a website. So you have to navigate to that website and take a look at the tag here. All right, so this is where I'm going to explain you a little bit on how to navigate through the HTML code of a website. And to do so, what I'm going to introduce is a library called request. So that this library, I think you have to install it. I'm not quite sure. Let me check that, because import request. Yeah, I think it usually comes by default, or at least if you installed Selenium, I think request comes by default. But yeah, you can import request, and you can make some requests, as the name suggests, to different websites. So in this case, let's say that I want to do a GET request from Wikipedia. A GET request is basically it's going to basically download the HTML code of this website. If you are going to make a GET request to an API, it will give you a different structure. Maybe it will give you an answer in a JSON format. Don't worry too much about that. If you get to the API and request module, you will see the differences between request to websites and and request to APIs. In this case, Since we are going to do web scraping, I'm just going to tell you what request does when you are scripting or when you are making a GET request to a website. So let's go with, let's say, request. And as I said, I'm going to make a GET request to this website. Don't forget to put that inside a string. And all right, so it's basically telling me that, all right, it's going to be a response 200. If you're familiar with different protocols on HTTP, HTTPS, and all of that, you will know that response 200 means that everything went okay. And the server basically, we sent a GET request to the server, and the server said, all right, yeah, this seems legit. I'm going to return you, or I'm going to give you the information that you are asking for. If, for example, I'm sure you already know this error 404, not found. So that's another response that you can get from a request. If you, for example, make a request to something that doesn't exist, then you will get the response 404. And yeah, you will have a table in the API request chapter to see all the possible responses that you might have. But in this case, yeah, all right. So we know that we get the information, but how do we access that information? Okay, so let's store the output of request.get inside this variable R. So R is going to be, it's going to be response 200, but this response has different attributes, and one of them, for example, is text. And we can take a look at the text that is going to give us the HTML code that we can see here. Yeah, looks nice. Well, not really, doesn't look nice. It's really hard to read. I can see where is the text. I cannot see where are the tags that we want to look for. One more thing, if you remember from yesterday, each one of these tags here, each one of these sections here is a tag. So you can see that. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit. Yeah, nice. Okay, so you can see that we have div, division. You can see that we have a. What else we can take a look at here? To do h1, so this is going to be a header. What else? Div, well, you will see li as in list. You will see ul as in unlisted list. There's a lot of tags, but and those tags will help us to identify different parts of the website. So for example, if we want to take a look at the header here, we know that we can go with inspect and take a look at tag h1. So those are the tags that we are going to use to guide us through the HTML code. So coming back to this text here, as I said, it's going to be very difficult to read here. I don't know where the tags are. I don't know where the text is. So what I'm going to do is going to introduce you to another library, and probably you have heard about it. It's called Beautiful Soup, and I think that this one needs to be installed. I'm just going to try it. So from PS4, import Beautiful Soup, and yeah, if you want to install it, you can always go to the terminal. But in my case, since it's going to be a demo, I'm going to install it from my notebook. So you can just say pip install Beautiful Soup 4. Don't forget about the 4, please. We had a lot of requests, support requests saying that they can't find Beautiful Soup, and it's always the same. It's always because they forgot about the 4. So Beautiful Soup 4. Okay, yep, that's it. And once you install it, don't forget that the library is BS4. It's not from Beautiful Soup 4, it's from BS4. Okay, so once installed, Beautiful Soup is, many people confuse Beautiful Soup with a scraping, with a web scraper library. Beautiful Soup is basically a translator of that HTML code that we can obtain from request. And let me explain you what I mean by translator. So I'm gonna create an object called soup, and it's going to be a beautiful soup that we are going to pass the text that we got from our request. And then we are going to say that, yeah, we are going to parse that text as an HTML. Good. So let's take a look now at soup and see that now it looks pretty much like much better. Like all the tags are well defined. We can see everything separated in different lines. It's going to be much easier to read. But still, there's a lot of information here. It's not going to be very useful, right? Luckily, Beautiful Soup, one of the things that Beautiful Soup has is that it allows us to find different elements. The same way we will see on Selenium, we can do something very similar with the HTML code in Beautiful Soup. So this will have methods such as find, and inside find, yeah, we can take a look here. Yeah, basically we need to find, well, we want to find, for example, a specific tag and with different attributes. One thing that I want to highlight, by the way, is that you can see that each tag has a name, for example, H1, div, or A. And then inside each tag, we can see ID or we can see class. Those are going to be the attributes inside that tag. So not only the tag is going to help us finding whatever we want to find inside the website, but also we can use or we can leverage these attributes to make the search easier. So let's say that that in this case I'm going to look for a div, for example, a div tag, and the ID. Well, let's say, well, actually, let's go with, instead of doing that, I'm going to look for this text here. Yeah, this p tag is not going to be very good for my example. So let's see if I can find something that might be helpful. All right, so let's say that I want to find this header, this H2 that I can see here. But and you can see that the child of this H2 is going to be a span tag. Let me explain you a little bit on child and siblings in this HTML code. So you can see that this HTML code is basically divided into different tags. And if you expand one of the tags, you can see that it expanded and it basically shows you different tags or different sub tags. Each one of this sub tag, each one of these tags inside this parent is going to be a child. It's going to, well, you can see that in this case, it has many children, and each one of these children in turn will can have different children as well. And among themselves, so in this case, style, div, table, they are at the same level. You can see that they are basically at the same level, meaning that they are siblings. So yeah, it's important to know all of this because you will eventually leverage all this relationship between tags just to make sure that you are finding or you can find the right tag. So in this case, sorry, that was a small diversion. In this case, what we are going to look for is etymology, but that etymology is going to be in this H2 whose child is going to be a span. So let's look for a span. And you can see that the class is going to be MW headline, and the ID is going to be, where's the ID? Is going to be etymology. So let's look for a span tag whose ID is equal to etymology. We can do that very easily with Beautiful Soup, saying that the ID, and you pass a dictionary here, and then the value of that ID inside this tag. So in this case, ID is going to be equal to etymology. And let's see what we find. Okay, right now it's not saying saying us a lot, right? It's basically saying the same thing that we can see here: span class, MW, headline, ID, etymology. Yep, we have the same. But as I said, what we want to obtain from here is going to be the text. So we can do that just by saying text, and we obtain basically the text inside there. Cool. But one thing that I wanted to do at the beginning was just extracting this text here. Okay, so let's inspect that. And we can see that it's going to be a P tag, P as in paragraph, by the way. And the problem with this paragraph is that it doesn't have a class. It doesn't have a class, it doesn't have an ID. You can see that it's basically empty. It doesn't have any attribute. So if you try to find a P tag inside soup, yeah, it will give you any P tag. Let's try to do that and see what we get in return. Yes, MP, well, we have a paragraph whose class is going to be MWMT ELT. It's not the same one that we were looking for. And the problem with this is that we cannot find the specific P tag in this case, mainly because, yep, it doesn't have any attribute. It doesn't have anything that is telling this P tag apart from the other P tags. But luckily, we can leverage, or we can use the rest of the relationships with their siblings or their parents just to find this one. We know that P tag is going to be the direct sibling of H2, right? They are at the same level and they are just next to each other. So we know that this P tag that we are looking for is going to be the direct sibling of H2. All right, so maybe we can find H2 and then find the next sibling. Now, the problem again is that H2 doesn't have any attribute, but we know that it has a child whose tag is span and whose class is going to, whose ID is going to be etymology. So we can find that span tag, look for its parent, and then look for the next sibling of that parent. So basically, it's like we are looking for these for span's uncle or aunt, basically the sibling of its parent. So let's recap. And as I was saying, we are going to first look for something, looking for a span tag that or whose ID is going to be equal to etymology. Cool. And I'm going to call this span. Now I want to find the parent of span. So I'm going to call that H2 is going to be equal to span. Now, instead of looking throughout the whole HTML code, I'm just going to look for something with respect to span. So I'm going to start looking for something at this point. And what I want to find it's its parent. So we can just say find parent, and that should do it. So yeah, it's correct. Now H2 doesn't tell us a lot, but let's take a look at what's the value of H2 now. Yeah, you can see that's correct because we have H2, then span class, the same one that we have level below, and everything's covered by this, everything's surrounded by this H2. And now the next step will be finding the the next sibling of H2. And that will be the P tag that we were looking for. So, yep, this is actually just giving me the solution. And let's take a look at P. Cool. But once again, what I want to extract is basically the text. Oh, yeah, there we go. And now we can see that if we take a look at the text, is saying the word koala comes from Darugula or whatever. And the word koala comes from Darugula, meaning no water. Nice. We learned something new apart from Python and Beautiful Soup. We know the etymology of koala now. Okay, good. So now that we know more or less how these edge paths and how the relationship between tags work, is there any question? Because then the next thing that I'm going to explain will be Selenium.
Yeah, just one thing. I love the dot text as stripping out the text that's in there. I noticed in the text that you stripped out, it needs an escape character before the apostrophe because the speech marks seem to have rendered fine, but the on the fourth line down, the U has got apostrophes around it, and that's so just there, yeah. And there've been escape characters. Is there a simple way to strip out like escape characters and stuff like that?
All right, let's see, because usually the escape characters are not printed out when you are literally printing it. If you just take a look at the value, it will give you like the actual value. So it will give you the actual value, and then when you print that out, it won't show up all those. It won't print out those backslashes and all of that that make things a little bit uglier.
Handy, thanks.
No worries. And yeah, once again, yeah, there we go. If you print that out, you can see that there's no backslashes. And actually, you can see that there's no apostrophe at the beginning of the text.
Is there a way of doing a kind of find all, like that fit a particular condition, or say, like, you know how CSS can select a certain kind of thing? Is there a similar thing?
Yeah, exactly. That's a very good question, and the answer is that it's very, very easy to find all the text that contains a certain condition. Let's say that you want to find all these span tags. You can do that, and that's it. And now if we take a look at span, we have a list in which each element is basically a span tag, whatever comes inside that span, basically.
Okay, so if you wanted to find all the paragraphs that followed an H2, for instance, would that be possible using that find all, or is that just for finding a particular tag?
Yeah. You can find all, for example, you can find all the H2 tags in this case. And if I run that, yeah, it found 12 H2 tags, but you can add more conditions. For example, I just want to find all those H2 tags whose class is MW headline, for example. And now, well, it didn't find anything, probably because there's no H2 tags with a MW headline class. But yeah, you can add as many conditions as you want, and it will find all of them. All of the tags that meet those conditions, of course.
Awesome, thanks.
Nice, no worries, no worries. Okay, any other question? Cool. Right now I'm going to move on to Selenium, and allow me to change the animal, because if I keep looking at this color, I'm just going to fall in love. So let's go with dog. Nice. Okay. Now instead of I'm just going to keep here. I'm just going to stay here in Wikipedia, and I'm going to use Selenium instead of Beautiful Soup to do the same thing that we were just doing, and you will see that everything is very similar. Okay, so what I was explaining earlier was how to navigate through the HTML code, but I haven't explained too much about edge paths. So an edge path is basically the path that you are going to follow throughout the HTML code to reach that point that you're looking for. In this case, an edge path or an absolute edge path, for example, let's say that I want to find this div tag. Then what the edge path will do will start at HTML, then it will go to body, then it will go to div, the third div, then it will go to the third div, and then it will take the first div. Actually, let me just show you how what that looked like. And I'm going to copy that edge path and paste it here. Well, luckily, in some cases, the edge path that you can find will be much simpler. In this case, yeah, we were lucky, and that that edge path is quite efficient. But let me show you a different example. For example, let's see if this one is going to. Oh, sorry. Actually, let's just copy the full edge path of that. Where was it? Here. So instead of just copy the edge path, I'm going to copy the full edge path. And basically you will see the same thing that I was telling you earlier. You will start with HTML code, then you will go to body, then you will try to look for the third or fourth div tag, then again the fourth div tag, and then the first div tag. Or well, yeah, in this case it's actually the third, because this is not like Python that is zero indexed. It's going to just be, well, the index will start at 1. So this is how you, well, this is basically the edge path, the absolute edge path. It will just go one by one or tag by tag, and it will navigate from top to bottom. But the problem with using the edge path like this, well, actually let's use Selenium. Sorry, first let's use Selenium to see if we find the same thing here. So we can use from Selenium dot WebDriver import Chrome, and from WebDriver Manager Chrome import Chrome Driver Manager, and I'm going to initialize the driver with Chrome, and I'm going to tell it to install Chrome Driver Manager, and I'm going to tell it to go to this website. So the method that you are going to use a lot, and remember this, try to remember this as well as possible, is get. So that's a method. Remember that it's going to be a method, it's not a function. And the difference between a function and a method is that the function doesn't belong to a class, whereas the method has to be attached to a class. In this case, we need to use get after we initialize driver. We cannot use get directly because that method belongs to this type of class. Okay, so let's run that, and nice. We use Selenium, and it basically started a new Chrome session, and it just took us to this Wikipedia page. Great. So as I was saying,
sorry if I interrupted you.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But I don't know if it's for my internet, but it's running too slow, and your screen it's below than you speak.
What
I
do you mean is below?
From my connection or.
Oh. Do you?
So
it seems pretty in sync for us. Yeah, for me at least. When you talk, it's all synchronized, so I'm not having the same problem.
Oh,
yeah.
let me see if I can change.
So I'm not having the same problem. I said.
Yeah, it's okay for me as well.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure. Yeah, everything looks fine here. All my settings are fine. Does anyone else have a problem with my voice or something?
No, everything's good.
No, it's okay on my side as well.
Okay.
That's fine.
Oh, sorry to hear that. Well, you can always take a look at the recordings eventually if that helps. Yeah, but yeah, I'll try to speak as slow as possible, I guess. Okay, so we already have our driver inside this website. And as I said, what we are going to try to do with our driver is take a look at this edge path and get the information from this edge path. Okay, so that's quite easy. We can go with driver remember that driver is already, or you can assume that your driver is here. It's just taking a look at this website. Okay, so we are going to tell our driver to find something, to find element in this case, and by. So we are going to define by its by dot its path, because we are going to use an its path. And don't forget that your its path will be string. Now it will throw me an error. Basically, did I commit? Oh, sorry. It will throw an error basically because I haven't imported by. Yeah, name by is not defined, but not a problem. We just need to import it from from Selenium. Don't worry about it. So from Selenium, come on. It was I always forget about it. Let me just look for that on Wikipedia. Sorry, on Stack Overflow. Selenium boy. Except Selenium boy Python. I always forget how to import the whole thing. So let's see if we can find it here. Nope. Import. WebDriver, I don't want that. I just need to use by. Come on, show me how to use by. How to use Python. Okay, here it is. Yeah, I was about to get it. It was Selenium WebDriver common. So many words. Okay, so yeah, once again, let's run that. It will open a new session with Selenium. It just took me to the doc pages, and now that we imported by, we can use by its path. Good, it found it, but yeah, once again, it doesn't tell us a lot. It's basically a WebDriver element. Let's see if we can do something else. Yeah, why not? Let's just extract the text. Nice, right? It was easy. Just basically took this part of the text just by saying .text, and it will give you that attribute. Okay, so we know how to use its paths now with the from the HTML code. But as I was saying, yeah, it's not very efficient to do it like this, mainly because you can see that this div tag depends on the previous one, and this one in turn depends on the previous one, and this one depends on the previous one. So it might, as soon as this position of the website changes a bit, then this its path will not be useful, mainly because the disposition will change, and these numbers, the div or any number here, will change, and your code will not work. So what can we do in order to avoid those type of problems? We can, instead of getting the full its path, we can also take a look at the we can also take a look at the attributes of that div tag. We know that this div tag has an ID that is equal to site sub sub. So we can use that as well, the same way we did it on Beautiful Soup. In this case, we have the its path, and let's define the its path so that we can find any div that, in this case, the its path, when you are defining something, or when you're defining the attributes, it's going to be a little bit different than than from Beautiful Soup. In this case, you start with one or two slashes, then the name of the tag that you want to find, and between square brackets, you are going to define the attributes that you want. In this case, we want a div tag that whose ID is going to be equal to site sub. And you might be wondering what's the difference between using 1 or 2 slashes. So if I just use one single slash, you will start looking at the direct children from the root. In this case, the direct children are basically head and body, because we are not going to be moving any lower below this 2. But if I put 2 slashes here, it will find, or it will look for this div tag anywhere in the HTML code, regardless of the level. It will just try to look for any div tag. And in this case, yep, it will try to look for any div tag whose ID is equal to site sub. And yep, it's working fine. It's working well, and yep, very nice. Okay, so now that we know a little bit more on edge paths, you can always refer to edge paths on the notebook. But yeah, it's important to know the difference between 1 slash and 2 slashes. If I just try to run it with 1 slash, it won't find anything. Mainly because, as I said, it will just try to find div tags at this level. And of course, it won't find anything. So yeah. Just remember that 2 slashes will correspond to any children, or sorry, any level inside the HTML tree. And one more thing about edge paths that you might find eventually very useful is that if you want to, let's go back to the example that we had earlier on etymology, taxonomy, evolution. Well, I'm gonna go with koalas. Cool. So if we try to look again here at etymology, if we try to look for, let's say that we are going to look for this span tag from this h2. Okay, so first of all, what I'm going to do now is going to first look for div. Then I'm going to look for its direct sibling, and then I'm going to look for the span tag that is going to be a direct children of h2. So once again, in this case, instead of dog, I'm going to go with koala. Nice, another session with koalas. And as I said, I'm going to look for this. Well, actually, I'm just going to be lazy now, and I'm going to copy the direct here, the direct edge path, the full edge path of this header, this h2 that you can see here. I'm just gonna copy that. I'm gonna paste it here. Cool. And in this case, h2 is going to be that. It found it, no problem. But now, if we want to find the direct children of h2, meaning that it's going to find the span, the lower below than, well, one lower below, then we cannot just go with driver find element and look for any span tag. If we try to do that, it's not going to work. And the reason why is because we need to define where to start looking for that, where to start its search. So we already know that h2 is going to be here, and its direct children is going to be a span. So we can use that. So we can use that to find span. In this case, instead of using driver, because driver will contain the whole HTML code, we can go with h2, and h2 also has this attribute find element, and we can say by edge path, and it's going to look for span, but it doesn't work yet because we need to tell to the edge path to start looking for span from this point. And we can do that by just simply adding one dot at the beginning of the edge path. And now it's working fine. And yeah, this once again, this whole this whole edge path is called absolute edge path or full edge path. And in this case, if we add one dot, it's going to be relative edge path, meaning that it will start looking for this edge path, taking into account that we are going to start from H2. All right. Cool. So we are running out of time, and just a couple of things that I want to show you now that we know how to handle edge paths and all of that is that something that yesterday we were taking a look at, and that's basically how to use search bars in from Selenium. So what I'm going to do here is going to inspect the search bar, and for example, in this case, we have a tag whose name is going to be input and whose class is going to be vector search bots input. So we can say that search bar is going to be equal to driver.find element. You can say, for example, by you can say, for example, by ID. That would be one possibility. And in this case, yeah, ID will be this one. Instead of using edge path, you can also use ID and just use the value of this ID that you can see here. So search bar has already been found, and you can use the click method from Selenium. And now you can see that this has been highlighted. And to the search bar, you can also, apart from clicking on it, you can also send keys. So send keys, and I'm going to go with doc in this case. And yep, magically doc has appeared there. So remember this, basically when you are using Selenium, you will use a lot find element, click, send keys, and probably a couple of commands that you can find in Stack Overflow. So for example, Selenium scroll down Python. Just search everything that you want to do with Selenium on Google, and usually the first here. Usually the first answer is going to be good. It's going to be a good one. So let me start again, and I'm just gonna finish with this just to show you another thing that you can do with Selenium, which is pretty nice. In this case, I'm going to say execute this script. This script is going to be a JavaScript code, so don't worry too much about what it says. Basically, you can execute different JavaScript commands from Selenium. In this case, it will just go to the window and it will scroll to this point. And if I run this, look at that. It automatically went all the way down. Oh, it actually went really far down. Just let me repeat that just to show you that I'm not cheating or whatever. Just going to run this and automatically it goes all the way down. So this might be helpful in case you have different websites, for example, Instagram, in which you have to scroll down to make more images appear. So if you scroll down to the bottom of Instagram, more images, more pictures will be loaded, and you can enter in an infinite loop. So you can use, for example, this script or this command just to do an infinite loop until you're happy with the amount of pictures that you can, that Selenium has displayed. And sorry, I said that was the last thing, but one more thing that I want to show you is something that you will eventually use. From Selenium WebDriver.options up. No, damn it, sorry. It was I always forget all the commands. I always rely too much on Google. So Headless Mode, Selenium, Python. Sorry, just give me 1 minute, because this is important to know that, it's important to know that you will have this possibility. And you will add a lot of different arguments and different options to your driver. One of the most common one, WebDriver Chrome options. I always forget about it. Okay, so one of the options that you can add to your driver is Headless Mode. And once you define that headless mode, as you can see here, options will be this class here. You can add the argument headless and say that the options of your driver will be equal to the options that you have defined. And now, if I run that, okay, sorry, let me just close all the windows just to show you what's going on. Now we don't have anything on Google Chrome. So if I run that, nothing popped up, but Selenium is working behind the scenes. For example, if I try to do this, it's still working, but nothing will appear. Headless mode means that Selenium is working, but it doesn't show you what it's doing. Basically, it doesn't open Chrome for you. And if you don't want to constantly see Chrome on the background or whatever, and you are running a scraper that is going to take a lot of time, you can just use headless mode, and it will scrape data on the background, and you will not notice. And yeah, you still can use a lot of arguments. You will eventually need to use different arguments, but for now, this is more than enough. And yeah, sorry, I'm quite off time now, so I'm just going to stop talking now. Well, any question?
Yeah, with headless mode, does that mean that Chrome is actually still running on your machine?
Yeah, it's still running.
Right? Okay,
it's still running,
so it's just not.
You are not going to see it. That's the only thing.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
No worries. And yeah, eventually, for example, if you are going to use headless mode, if you are going to deploy your scraper in, let's say, in EC2 instance on Amazon Web Service, you are not going to be able to see the output of Google Chrome. Even if you install it, there's no graphical interface in the EC2 instance. So if you try to use Selenium as it is right now, it will break. It will just break because there's no display to show Chrome. So you will have to set headless mode in case you are using an EC2 instance. Okay, any other question?
Just one in terms of, I know Chrome is great at memory usage and things, but if you're running it in headless mode, does it open up a fresh instance each time you run that? I guess it closes your previous instances every time you run it.
Yeah, that's a good question. Not necessarily. So, yeah, sorry, that's a really good point. When you're finished doing everything that you want to do, don't forget to use quit, because otherwise it will be around the background until it just runs out of memory, or you manually kill that process. So don't forget to use the driver.quit. I completely forget about that.
Cool. All right. Thanks for the demo. That was really good.
Yeah, thank you. Cheers. If you have any question about Selenium, about beautiful soup or request, just let me know. Okay.
Sorry, this is a not something I want to do, but just to say you don't want to just scrape one link on a website, and you want to scrape the whole website. Is there a way of doing that with like a wildcard or anything?
Yes. The thing is that probably you will have to figure out how to do that. And depending on the website and depending on what you want to scrape, there are many ways to do so. For example, you can create a crawler, or it's called what its name as crawler, which will basically get all the links inside a website, and it will go one by one. And inside each one of those links, it will keep extracting more links.
Yeah. Okay.
That's
cool.
basically what is called crawler or web crawler, because it will just go one by one, crawling over all the possible links.
Yeah. Thank you. That's really useful.
Cool. No worries. Okay, so if there are no more questions, I'm going to stop sharing now.